Hey, welcome to 12-Tone Building Blocks, our monthly series about the fundamentals of music theory. Last time we talked about chord functions, which are the different jobs that chords in a key might perform. There's tonic chords, which feel at rest, dominant chords, which point you back to tonic, and subdominant chords that act as a bridge between the two. So if we were going to write a chord progression with them, probably the most obvious thing to do would be to start with tonic, like this one chord, then go to subdominant, like the 4, then dominant, like the 5, and then just go back to the beginning. This is a pretty common chord progression. In fact, many of the most popular harmonies out there are just embellishments of this 3-chord pattern. And of those embellishments, probably the most common trick is just adding in a second tonic chord, so instead of going 1, 4, 5, 1, we might slip in a 6 minor to smooth out the transition. This gives us one of the biggest chord progressions of the 20th century and possibly of all time. It has many names like the 50s progression or the ice cream chords, but I like to call it the doo-wop changes. It's an incredibly smooth sound in which every chord is doing exactly what it's supposed to, and it just feels good. Of course, you can also swap in other chords with the same functions. For instance, instead of the subdominant 4, we could use a 2 minor. Or instead of the tonic 6 chord, we could use a 3 minor. You can even swap in a 7 diminished instead of the 5 chord if you want. Although the movement from 4 to 7 is a bit intense. Point is, there's plenty of different things you can do with this model, and most of them will sound pretty good. But we're musicians and we don't always follow the rules. Chord functions are guidelines and they're much more flexible than something like the doo-wop changes would imply, which brings us to the infamous four-chord song. If you haven't seen Axis of Awesome's breakdown of all the songs this has been in, I highly recommend you check it out. Anyway, it goes like this. And you may have noticed that we're using all the same chords we did back in the doo-wop changes, just in a slightly different order. We start on the 1 chord again, which grounds us in tonic function, but then we jump the gun and skip straight to a dominant function chord. That's fine though, we're allowed to do that. Subdominant chords aren't really necessary, they just add some extra strength, so we haven't broken anything yet. Next we go to the 6 minor, and again, this isn't that bad. The 5 wanted to go back to 1, so it's a slight diversion, but the 6 is still tonic function, and the leading tone does get to resolve, so it works well enough. And then we go from 6 minor to the 4 chord, which we did in the doo-wop changes too, so obviously that's fine. But then something strange happens. The progression repeats, which means we go from the 4 chord, a subdominant sound, straight back to the 1 chord, which is tonic without any sort of dominant in between. From what we know about chord functions though, that really shouldn't happen. Subdominant chords don't point you home, so there's no sense of resolution to be had. And honestly, that's kind of the point. A really strong resolution can imply finality, and you don't always want that. Using a subdominant sound instead dulls that resolution, letting the song continue on without as much of a break. Really, as with most things in art, there aren't any actual rules here. Functional harmony is such a useful tool mostly because it's so open-ended. If you know how chords are supposed to behave, then you know how to manipulate those behaviors to get whatever effects you want. You can stick them together the way they're supposed to go, but you don't have to. If you don't though, it's worth asking yourself why. Anyway, thanks for watching. Building Blocks was made possible thanks to our patrons on Patreon, so if you want to see more stuff like this, please consider supporting. You can also join our mailing list to find out about new episodes. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and keep on rockin'.